By any measure, last week was a shambolic week in politics. 4 days of political point scoring, all in the name of accountability, all while the community struggles with the cost of living. Although it was Prime Minister Albanese who stated he wanted to lead a gentler parliament, it does take two to tango. So my question to Bill and Bridget, how will you be examples to your colleagues to bring empathy back into Australian politics?
Good question.
Bill Shorten, we'll start with you. Last week, do you consider it shambolic?
I'm afraid it was worse than shambolic. It was toxic. It's not how a lot of Parliament is, but it's certainly not how it should be. So I suspect 100% of the MPs will probably realise when they got on the plane and left the building that it had been a really depressing week for Australians. There's a lot of good work going on, but a week like that and some of the actions overshadowed, I think, a lot of what a lot of us are trying to do every day, which is make Australia a better place and help Australians.
Bridget, there are a lot of really serious issues going on. Families are really struggling. Why did the Coalition choose to pursue this line of questioning and focus on these issues last week?
Well, I think there were serious and legitimate questions that needed to be asked in the face of a minister misleading the Senate, and we asked questions about who knew what, when, what was done with that information, all very legitimate questions. And you know, this issue, when it was last in Parliament, was pursued ferociously by the then opposition. And I think we were very careful, as we could be, with our tone, but to also ask legitimate questions of the government and their ministers, not just around who knew what when, but also around the swiftness of the compensation payment, why some evidence in that process was explicitly excluded, and the substantial nature of it. All legitimate questions, and I think it was the right thing to do.
OK, but did it blow up in your face? I mean,
PK,
Senator Van's now
too,
not in the Liberal Party.
No, he's not, nor should he be.
Yeah, but
right?
shouldn't
so
he have
I think that's a good
been
outcome.
pursued 2 years ago when this first came up, when his office was moved by Scott Morrison at that point? Was that the right call? What's your view on what should have happened at that point?
Well, I think if you listen to Senator Thorpe's explanation in the chamber, it was resolved to her satisfaction at the time. And I think with all manner of sexual harassment, sexual assault claims like this, it has to be resolved, in this case, to the woman's satisfaction. Now, sometimes that means women can choose to say nothing. Women can choose to take action and have it resolved between the two parties, and other women choose to take particularly serious incidents to court, as they should be encouraged and supported to do. And so at the end of the day, it is, did the woman affected feel that it was resolved to her satisfaction? And Senator Thorpe agreed that at that time it was. But like these topics, and it happened the last time, that when the shoe was on the other foot, that staff, men and women, but particularly women in this case, who had either gone through a similar experience themselves or friends, family, etc., had personal experience of this, felt very triggered in that moment. And I think Senator Van, standing in the Senate, speaking the way he was, completely had that, Senator Thorpe had quite a visceral reaction to that. And obviously you've seen how that played out. It was referred to the President. And obviously then when Amanda Stoker raised her issues, then obviously Peter Dutton took swift and decisive action. And, there was a hooray throughout many offices as a result of that swift action.
Now, Monique, I know you're just a newer MP, but there's obviously been a huge reckoning in the Parliament about the treatment, particularly of women, but broader issues as well. Do you think the place has changed? Is there evidence of that?
Well, it's hard for me to say that, Patricia, because obviously I'm relatively new to the House, as you say. I've only been there for 12 months. I'm told it feels different from what it felt like before. But I have to say that it's known to all of us that only 13% of women, Australian women who are subjected to sexual harassment or violence, report it. And the politicisation of this matter in the House last week would be an active deterrent to anyone who is considering disclosing that sort of experience in Australia. And I thought it was... I can speak for other members of the crossbench because we talked to each other after each question time because we found it distressing. And we wanted to stand to our feet and say that we felt that it was conduct unbecoming Parliament. And I think if we learn nothing from this, we have to decide as a society whether we want our Parliament really to be dragging people who've gone through really difficult experiences through that sort of experience again. It wasn't ideal. I actually felt it was shameful, and I think many people.
Now, Sam and Reuben, you're not parliamentarians, but you are no doubt consumers of what's going on in that place. How did you read it?
That's why we look happier. It's yeah, I think that whole toxic workplaces. For me, I'm relatively old. I'm 55, and for me, being touched up by the boss and having people make sexual innuendo to us in our particular age group. Monique, you're of an age, right? So was almost. So it was a thing that was accepted back then in the day, and
It was.
yeah, it really was. And so it's culture change really, and we need to understand that it is not acceptable at all to not have a safe workplace. So as somebody who skulks around Parliament a fair bit, I don't think I'd like to work there, to be honest.
But we're hearing that it is changing.
It is.
You still don't feel like it's at
Well,
that...
Bill's been there. I've been there 14 years. Bill's been there a little long. Yeah, 15. And it has categorically changed from when I arrived after the 2010
You think
election.
it has too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hope so.
I mean, Bridget made some points about Kaye Gallagher. I don't think the opposition was justified to the extent that it went, and I think it had some negative, or some very real effects for a whole lot of other people. But parking the sort of political point, the following 2019 to 2022, in that time, a review was set up by, we've got Kate Jenkins, who's a very experienced expert in terms of the rights of women and workplaces. Last week doesn't show that things have changed, but why I think that's unfair at one level is because a whole lot of other pieces have changed. There's what's now happened is there's now a parliamentary work support service. It's independent of government. It's independent of the political parties. So that means that staff, including obviously women's staff, have got somewhere independent in charge of human resource management. Like, I know it sounds a little weird, but that never used to happen.
No, it was...
Parliament was well behind, politics was well behind even other parts of the Australian sector. So there is some change.
If I can bring you back to the central
Actual
question, which was how will you change it to bring more empathy? Bridget, if you had your time again, would you really play last week the same way?
Yeah.
Thinking about that question?
I know, yeah, absolutely.
The same way, with no revisions?
With respect, Patricia, we know Australians are doing it tough under, this government and the mortgage increases, etc. Rent's going through the roof. Food inflation's at 8%, etc. It's bleeding everything. But that doesn't absolve us of the responsibility as an opposition to actually hold the government of the day to the account. Now, last time these issues were raised, and Monique, you weren't there, but it was ferocious, and the same trauma was evidenced in staff and colleagues at that time. So that shouldn't absolve us of the responsibility of actually pursuing these issues as long as they are legitimate, and we were very careful to make sure our tone was correct and that we were actually pursuing the issue, not the person.
Reuben, what do you think?
I think this isn't a parliamentary issue. I don't think it's a partisan issue, but I do think there are partisan motives for people to be investigating things. I think going after Kaye Gallagher was a distraction method and a blame avoidance tactic, and I think it makes it more difficult for survivors of sexual abuse to report that abuse, and it further perpetuates sexual abusers to feel like they're entitled to women's bodies.